Hey, it's episode number 320, and today we're talking all things traffic. Erik Huberman is the founder of Hawk Media, one of the fastest growing agencies in the United States. He's a world-renowned expert and speaker and coach, and we're going to get into the nitty-gritty today when it comes to driving traffic and what metrics really matter in your e-commerce business. So the numbers your agency is giving you, what ones should you be looking at the most? Is it your ROAS? Is it your customer lifetime value? Is it the clicks? Where's the traffic coming from in your funnels? We're getting into the nitty-gritty today when it comes to funnels and Facebook ads. So get ready to meet Erik Huberman, the CEO and founder of Hawk Media.
Let's talk about your business, strategy, and the juicy details of what actually works, from mainstream fashion to fashion on Main Street, and the entire ecosystem behind it. How do we scale your company and do it with the balance and the happiness that we all seek? Let's hear from those insiders, experts, and strategists that actually make it happen. I'm your host, Ashley Alderson from the Boutique Hub, and I can't wait to chat.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast this week. And we are also on video on YouTube if you're catching us here. Today I'm joined by Erik Huberman, the founder and CEO of Hawk Media. We're going to talk about all things traffic today. Erik, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do a little bit of background in case our guests have not had an opportunity to meet you yet. Really, this is your jam. Traffic, working with all kinds of e-commerce brands. You help some of the fastest growing companies in the United States. You are Forbes 30 under 30, one of the fastest growing companies yourself. Tell me about how you got into this business.
Yeah, I started out of college in real estate in 2008 when the entire banking industry collapsed. And after making $350 that year, started working on online businesses as a kind of side hustle and ended up launching an online music company that I built for 2 years, got to profitability, and actually passed off to another CEO to pursue two other e-commerce companies consecutively, both in the fashion space, and ended up building both of those, selling them. And then about 8 years ago, started advising and consulting for a bunch of brands, saw how broken the whole marketing industry and e-com industry was in terms of trying to get access to great talent and great marketing. And it just, it was really a cluster to try to get through everything. And so got sick of the ecosystem, decided to build my own little SWAT team, started with 7 people, each with their own expertise, like a Facebook marketer, an email marketer, a web designer, all the specific points I knew were important for these companies. And went back to these brands I was working with at the time, which were like Red Bull, Verizon, HP, as well as a lot of startups, and said, hey, everything's a la carte, month to month, cheaper than hiring in-house, but basically we can spin up exactly what you need when you need it and ebb and flow as you need it. And so that's how we started. And on the sort of mission of accessibility to great marketing for everyone, we built, and now 7.5 years later, we're about 220 people, manage marketing for about 600 brands, have a venture arm where we invest in marketing technology to complement what we're doing, as well as a capital arm where we actually give financing to our clients for working capital as they scale. So I've really tried to build out that mission more and more.
I love that. And what was your mission? Affordable marketing for everyone? Is that what you said? Or access to quality marketing for everyone?
So it's really about accessibility. So affordability is part of that for sure. And we try to stay super cost effective, but it's really like, it's a combination of accessible and great. So accessibility is great marketing, because everybody has access to marketing. It just might not be very good. And that's been my biggest frustration, is the amount of snake oil salesmen, and 99% of marketers are just not good at what they do. And the few that are good are inaccessible. So trying to bridge that gap was really the mission.
Can we talk about that for a second? Snake oil salesmen. I feel like it is so common today. And a lot of the clients that we work with see this exact same thing. Everyone's going to come and it's like a scare them and save them tactic, whether that's Facebook ads or whatever marketing. And there's a lot of agencies that have taken advantage of brands that we've worked with. Talk to me about those red flags. How do you spot a snake oil salesman before they get you?
Yeah, I mean, I love seeing people, like, this is probably the most common, like, rudimentary snake oil salesman in Facebook and in advertising that I think a lot of probably your listeners will run into, where it's like, oh yeah, we got this client 100x on their advertising in 1 week and we can do it for you. It's like, if you can put in $1 and make 100, and you can do that with any type of consistency, you're not boasting about it on Facebook. You're just running that yourself and making billions of dollars. Like the nuance in there of how much BS goes into that statement, whether it's they did a retargeting campaign for 2 days on an existing email list that was already going to buy, and they did a Memorial Day sale, like all the things that come into that you're like, you took a window and what was probably a losing campaign and had 1 day of success on an interesting, graph. Like it's just, there's a lot of that braggadociousness that just is fake. What I usually say is if you're looking to hire marketers, hire people that have done what you're trying to do over the next 2 years. You're not going to necessarily want to hire someone that's done, like the head of marketing at Nike cannot usually help a brand new shoe company. They have a little bit of guidance, but they're not going to be tactical. But someone that took a shoe company from where you are to 2 years, where you want to be in 2 years, that's what you want. And hopefully they can continue to grow and stay with you. But that is, frankly, from a business standpoint, you're looking for those sort of 2, 3, 4, 5 year executives that can get you to that next phase. And then hopefully they grow with you and they can stay. Or frankly, you sometimes bring in that next executive that's then taking it from there to the next phase. And that's running a business. And with agencies, it's the same thing. Like the first thing to look at is like, who have you taken from here to where we want to be? And what role did you play in that? And then be real. Like, was it that they're good at what they did, or did they just jump on board a rocket ship that was going to grow on their own regardless of their agency? So, because there's a lot of that too. So yeah, it's really just figuring out where that is. And that's the first part in terms of like hiring or bringing on someone.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And then also talk on that level around fee structure as well. Like we see a lot of people that will say, oh my gosh, I got this ROAS, but then they're charging this just crazy fee every single month and they aren't figuring any of that into it. And at the end of the day, then these brands are losing money when they're paying this agency.
Yeah. So first off, there's a couple of things there that are actually going to be able to contrary to that. So one, ROAS, be super careful looking at what ROAS is. My favorite example of this just happened. So Facebook in iOS 14, Facebook just changed all their tracking from 28-day to 7-day window. Yeah. Meaning you used to track how much you made in 28 days of running an ad. Now you would track 7 days. So everyone's looking at the ROAS and going like, everything fell through the floor. Our business is dying. What's going on? It's like, no, your tracking changed. It's not your actual business. And people forget that your business is not a spreadsheet, and all the nuance of that data is super important. And by the way, we are in like multi-week long debates and arguments with clients that just do not understand. We're like, you keep talking about how your ROAS is worse than it was before iOS 14. Yeah. Your ROAS is it's a different number. It's not even, it's not comparable. And so that is super important to remember when you're looking at how the performance of your agency is, because it goes the other way too, where your agency might be reporting ROAS, but it's all retargeting. So it's all your existing audience that they're just retargeting and driving sales from people that have already been engaged with you. They're not building your funnel. They're not doing anything else. And so, your ROAS looks great and you're never going to grow. And so and it's going to milk over time and start to diminish. And like, those are the things, like you can't just stare at your ROAS. That's where so many people make a mistake. And then in terms of paying agencies, don't ever do a rev share. Ever, 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 ever. It incentivizes the wrong thing for the agency. Yeah. There are only two types of rev share agencies: con artists or bankrupt. Like, it's just, and argue with me, over time, every major rev share agency has gone bankrupt. This is the only nuance of this are really, really particular agencies that only take on a few clients a year and are like super invested in putting money in. And like, there are a few of those that have done well. Most don't, but a few do. And then affiliate agencies that are just running off other people being not taking any money unless they sell to, and they're just middlemaning that. Those two can work. Other than that, like standard marketing agencies taking a rev share, and it's a really big picture kind of reason, but to try to make it quick, you think you're aligned on incentive, but you're not, because long-term revenue growth happens when you build a good base that doesn't necessarily create short-term revenue growth. So the only way to really align with a client and an agency on a rev share is a very long-term contract. So then you're getting married before you ever date the agency. Yeah. So that's bad in and of itself. Yeah. And then number two, still, when that contract comes up, let's say you sign a 3-year contract. This happened to One Stop, which was a massive rev share agency that ended up going bankrupt. At the end of their 3-year contracts, every time they were costing too much money, what you just alluded to. They were crushing it for their clients, but their rev share was so high, they'd be like, now we're going to just bring this in-house. Thanks for setting it up. And so they'd churn these massive successful clients every time they got them to scale. And so it's not a sustainable agency business model either when you do the right thing. And again, the other way to do it is to con your clients to just not really spend any money, take no risk, milk their existing audiences until they're gone, and make the rev share that way. And that's the only really sustainable way to make it work. So don't do a rev share. And then on fees, it really should, this is where we get in debates on the media side, which is super important to think about. So if I'm so we charge between 8 and 20%, depending on the scale of the media spend, the percentage goes down. So let's say 10 just for round numbers. So if you're spending $500,000 a month with me and paying me 50 grand, I have people that this happens and they go, hey, we could hire 2 full-time people in-house or 3 full-time people. Like we can build this out. And I was like, well, we are using multiple people. So that's not really a debate, but they're like, okay, well, we want you to go to 8%. So we want to drop you from 50 to 40 grand. And I'm like, okay, fine. We are going to spend less time on it. That's just how we do things. It's a function of time. But you're now trying to save 10 grand, but we're earning you 5 times your advertising spend right now based on how it's performing. So you're spending $500,000 a month. We're making you $2.5 million a month, and you're worried about my $10,000. I think you're focused on the wrong thing right now. And that's where, like, when it's working, it can be expensive, but you also have to look at like what the upside is. Like you're optimizing for a percentage of your sales, assuming it's going well. And so agency fees, if things are going well, shouldn't be that much of a factor. And when people start to nickel and dime us, they end up screwing themselves because they're like, yeah, like, listen, it's really simple. Like, we're going to just have to pay less attention to you if you take away our fees. Yeah. But if that's what you want, and then it goes, slightly downhill and it's like, yeah, now we're only getting you 4 times. So you just saved 10 grand, but lost $500,000. Good job. Well done.
I think there's a balance, and it probably comes down to the size of the client. To be honest, like if I'm thinking about a small business owner, there's a lot of them that like, they have to know that they can make money at the end of the day. Like if your client's making 2.4 million, that's great, right? They've got a margin in there,
even on the small scale. You have to
prove the profit.
Yeah. And I was going to say, even on a small scale, let's say we're talking about $5 grand a month and making 25 grand a month, just to be even there. If you're arguing with someone over $1,000, like you're looking at the wrong thing. You should be optimized as, and by the way, unless it's a bad agency, if the agency is no good, then they're not worth it. They're not worth it. But squeezing your agency, I actually think is a bad thing. Like that's not what you should be. Like the clients that get the most out of partners are the ones that support them and I do it with our vendors. I don't argue fees. I don't screw with them, but then I lean on them and I'm like, you better perform or I shouldn't be working with them. That's my whole thing. And that's, I'm dealing with that with a vendor of ours right now that continues to raise their price every 3 months on me. And they got to the point now where I'm like, do I really want this? I'm not going to say no. Like, I'm not going to say, no, we're sticking to your price, because then I'm just going to be their lowest paying client. They're not going to care about me. But I'm also, so I'm either going to do it or not, is how I look at it.
Yeah. Is it an investment or an expense? I think that mindset has to be the very first thing that you check off. Well, like the agencies should be an investment.
Yeah.
Right?
And all marketing should be an investment. If it's not an investment, don't do it.
Right. So let's go back to what you just talked about a second ago with ROAS, right? So I think there's like a gap maybe in reporting sometimes, or maybe it's the client has to have an understanding of what reporting should be happening. So you can't rely on ROAS alone. We have to talk about new customer acquisition. But let's just say there's someone that's brand new to Facebook ads. They're brand new to hiring, do what you do best and hire the rest. What should they be looking at? In each stage of the funnel with Facebook ads, what should be being reported on so they know that they aren't being taken advantage of?
Well, I think just in general, you need to look at how much are you spending on marketing, how much revenue are you driving, how much growth are you getting? Because you don't want to be on a hamster wheel either. So is your company growing? And like start there, start with the basics, because a lot of times the nuance, like when I look at ROAS, when I look at the individual optimizations of Facebook, I think of them as great indicators on how to optimize. Because if you're any type of consumer business and you can't, and Facebook isn't working, you've got bigger problems. So it's about like, those are indicators to help me optimize the ads on Facebook, not whether I should use Facebook or not. Like, it's not about like turning on and off Facebook. It's about optimizing Facebook and informing you on where else you need to optimize. Like, am I converting at a good rate? Am I, are people getting, bouncing from the homepage? Like optimizing everything else too is super important. But I think that's where people get lost. And again, separating the idea of like top of the funnel, meaning like new people that have never heard of your company coming in versus people that you're retargeting that have already know who you are, because that's going to have very different performance indicators. So it's a constant, it's taking a step back and just understanding the logic of marketing versus getting locked up in these spreadsheets. That's where people screw up. Marketing is not just a mathematical equation.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about iOS 14. You talked about just the change in tracking, right? I think there was a lot of changes happening for the last several weeks. Right now, our ads are probably the most cost effective they've ever been. All of a sudden this week, things have really shifted on a dime for us. But I think a lot of people kind of got scared in the market and stepped back and are trying to figure all of this out. What other changes do you see just like in the shift of how people are approaching paid advertising because of what's happening with iOS 14?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, short term, it's always painful when these changes happen because everyone's scrambling to figure out what the new way of working is. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be really painful for anyone that just relies on Facebook and I think that's been a
Yeah.
mistake. That's like any marketing, think of it as a portfolio strategy. Like you want to be diversified. You don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. And everyone that has all their eggs in the Facebook basket, both Facebook agencies and brands that are only on Facebook are going to hurt because they're
Yeah.
relying on this thing versus it's spread out. And so that piece of their business that's Facebook will shift and ebb a little bit, but they can counteract that with other pieces of their business. And I think over time it's going to be okay. I think Facebook will diminish a little bit. I think it's going to hurt Facebook a little bit, but not a lot. I just think there's going to be a little bit of a shift away from it. But the key thing I keep reminding our clients, our team, et cetera, about is like consumer spending didn't go down. Facebook ad tracking did. So it's like people are still spending as much money and buying shit. You just have to reach them in a different way and track it in a different way. It's not some devastating blow to business. It's just a difference in strategy. And so shifting that strategy is where the pain comes in, but that should be a couple months.
Yeah. Do you see people moving more toward like back to Google focus, back to SEO as a whole? Is it TikTok ads? Is it Pinterest? Like where else do you see people now investing in paid strategy?
Yeah, all of the above, but I actually think a better lifetime value strategy is really where people are winning. Owning their clients, merchandising, keeping your customers so that they keep coming back and buying more things that you offer them. So email marketing, SMS, chatbots, content, things that keep people in your ecosystem, I think will continue to be more and more and more important because I think there's been this rush the past decade for customer acquisition and it's getting really expensive and it's going to get harder and harder. And so we've had this sort of gold rush of e-commerce that I think, at some point sustainability becomes much more important.
Yeah, I can totally appreciate that, right? 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your list. It's been easy to neglect that.
Yeah.
And so I think about like post-pandemic life, that relationships became more important than ever. And that feels very cliche, like authenticity, relationships, like we've been saying that for a long time. But I truly think in marketing, that has really made a huge shift post-pandemic. How do you see brands optimizing that? Like where maybe they didn't have a face of the company before, they have to now, or they have to have a more personal feel than they've had in the past. Do you see that trend as well?
I do. I don't think that's everyone though. I think it's people ask me because I do a lot of personal brand stuff and we get out and about and do a lot of networking. And they're like, do you have to do that to be successful? I'm like, you don't have to do anything to be successful. There's different paths that different people can take. So I think also being careful of not doing what everyone else is doing all the time because you can just chase down and half-ass a bunch of stuff. Just be really good at the pieces you are. If you have a great personal story and it can lend to the brand, do it. If you are completely irrelevant to the brand, then stay irrelevant.
I like it. Email. Is email too crowded? How can you optimize it?
Email is not too crowded. So pre-pandemic, email had not seen a decline in performance in over a decade. The entire time I've been doing email marketing, we had not seen any declines. No improvement, but no declines. And then when the pandemic hit, it skyrocketed in a good way. So like everyone being stuck at home, they looked at their emails, they were looking for stuff to do. I think that'll subside a little bit, but it's not going back, like it's not worse. And so email marketing has been one of the biggest drivers for e-commerce, the entirety of e-commerce, and it still is. So it's just an important thing to do. And
what do you think strategy is changing with that?
What's that?
Is there strategy that's changing with that post-pandemic?
It's much more automation. Even pre-pandemic, it's much more automation and nuanced like personalization so that you basically in most email platforms can set triggers now based on what people do, their behaviors or actions that they take, et cetera. And the more you build that out so that it feels like you're talking to me directly, the better you're going to perform versus email blasts. Don't send email blasts often. Every once in a while, you can do a Memorial Day sale or whatever, but in general, don't do email blasts.
Oh man, you're preaching to the choir. We just did an entire podcast episode on that specifically on, treating every single person as if they have a sign around their neck that says, make me feel important. If I'm a size small and you send me something beautiful that's only available in large and extra large, I'm pissed because you just wasted my time. So segment me and send me something just for the smalls or just for the discount Debbies. Or whoever that customer is that needs to be spoken to most.
Exactly.
How about e-commerce? Let's just talk about like general e-com, like site optimization. For a small brand, do you feel like there are certain like CRO things that are typically missed? Are there ways we can optimize that are low-hanging fruit that most people don't see?
Well, SMS is another thing. SMS, we invested in a great platform called PostScript too that has become like the number one partner to Shopify on this. It's something that's missed. It's 10 times more effective than email marketing, and still something people just glaze over as like a nice to have versus a have to have. And like when you're competing, which you are online, you have to have some of these things. So I think that's a big one. And then collecting emails and phone numbers right when people hit your site. For some reason, still to this day, people shy away from it. We have no evidence that it's a bad thing. It's only a good thing, meaning people don't bounce away from your site because you're asking it. They might let them exit it. If they don't want to give it to you, that's fine. But you'll start collecting a lot of contact that will drive a lot more sales. So that's super important. And then just sticking to normal checkout processes and things that are standard now so that people are used to it and it's easy. The moment people have to learn something on your site, the moment they bounce. So keep it simple.
Helpful. And speaking of PostScript, a lot of our customers use PostScript. So I think that's really helpful to hear. They love that automation, and anything that's fully integrated with Shopify is super helpful.
Yeah, we're their biggest partner and one of their first investors.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. What are the things, let's say 3 things, that smaller businesses can learn from some of the largest brands that you work with?
3 things. One, so content. The content is unmeasurable, like not unmeasurable, but really hard to measure ROI from generating content. But if you can build a great content strategy where you're bringing people in to engage in your brand above and beyond a purchase decision, but still highlights that sort of aspirational solution you're trying to create as a brand so that people, let's say you're a beauty company and you have great beauty tips and, aesthetic tips, whatever it is that people can go tap into, that inherently is going to create more lifetime value of a customer because they're going to come in and engage with you above and beyond when they just meant to buy something, and they will inherently buy more. They'll convert at a higher rate. And also content is much more shareable than products. People will send content to each other much more often than products. And so you get that word of mouth a lot bigger too. And it really, if you do a good job on content, can create a much stronger base for your company. And a lot of the bigger brands we see, because on DR and sort of Facebook ads and that stuff, it starts to cap out in mid 8 figures. You can make a 20, 30, 40, 50, $60 million business, and then it gets really hard. And usually, if you're lucky, it's 60. If you're unlucky, it's 10. And then you're like, well, what do we do now? And that's when you have to build a real brand. And that's where content comes in, and community, and building out these things that actually create a great base, which, by the way, if you do these things as well, then when Facebook changes, iOS changes, it's all these things that happen, it's not devastating. It's just a little hiccup. And it's devastating when all you rely on is that direct response funnel.
Yeah. Talk to me more specifically about content. So we're talking about content that educates, content that motivates, informs, is aspirational. We're talking about TikTok. We're talking about Pinterest. Like,
so it's the platform's agnostic. It just depends on where your users want to engage in it. It can be on your website, can be on the social platforms, et cetera. But the content is around the aspiration of your brand. So if your brand is there to teach people, then educational is great. If your brand is there to give people energy, i.e. Red Bull, your content should all be about high energy stuff, because people then can watch your content, view your content, whatever it is, and then go, I want energy like that. I'm aspiring for energy. I'm going to drink a Red Bull. And it's the same thing. Like if you're Home Depot, the content is probably educational because that's kind of how they stand, is like, hey, we know you want to make your house look better. So here's some great tips on how to, improve your kitchen. Oh, wait, now you're going to need to buy a new stove. Interesting. We sell those. That's the idea, is like creating content that like really supports your products, but also creates content that even if they don't want to buy from you, you're giving them value, and they're probably going to inherently. And it doesn't have to be so direct as what I just mentioned about a stove. It could literally be like, top 10 places to build a house in the United States. Because if someone's looking at building a house, inherently at some point they might want to come into Home Depot. It's that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Talk to me about fashion brands. How do you see that playing into their hand?
So it depends on the fashion brand. If it's high fashion, it can literally be, it depends. Like activewear, good example. You can be giving health and wellness tips. If someone's wearing activewear, they want to feel more active. And so top 10 best hikes in the country, top 10 best diet plans, whatever it is, things that if you're looking to be active and you want to buy activewear, here are the other things that you might be aspiring for too. And we're going to create content around it.
Yeah.
If it's
a lot of
high fashion, it could be travel tips, dining tips. It could be things that, like, if you're dressing up in this, couture dress, you might be going somewhere cool. So like, let's give you some cool places to go. Let's talk about the things to complement it. Let's talk about jewelry brands. Let's talk about beauty tips, things that go with this aspiration that you're having to look your best.
Do you think that hand in hand plays into building a community? a lot of our customers use Facebook groups. They're super into Insta stories. It's very personal. How else can you build a community with that content?
Social, again, having social, and then actual experiential. I know the past year we haven't done it. We haven't been in person, but FabFitFun's a great example of this. They literally throw their FabFitFun like events where they have hundreds of people come out and build boxes and hang out and meet the stars that are involved with them and test the products. Like you can actually get people together, and that it's a really good way to capture, as you said, the 80-20 rule, that 20% super fans, or even let's say the 5% of ultra fans that are like really down to buy everything and spread the word about everything you do.
Yeah. Do you have a model or a funnel for your super fans? How you think brands could really enhance how they interact with those super fans?
I think you have to get to scale where those super fans are actually significant, because I think in the beginning it's not worth the time. If you've got 100 customers and five of them are super fans,
right,
you can, but you got to be careful about what that's taken away from. But over time, it's having unique products, unique experiences, unique launches that they can get into when they really want to get involved versus just everyone else getting the basics.
Okay. I love that. Any last minute tips for small businesses that are trying to have quality marketing today, that are maybe on the edge of being able to hire an agency but want to do as much as they can to get there first? What other tips would you give them?
To get there first?
Maybe they can't afford an agency yet. Maybe they're on the bubble. They're trying to figure that out, grow a little bit organically before they bring someone on.
Don't do it till you have 10 grand a month that you can spend for a long period of time. You gotta, let's say you should have 60 grand ready to spend on agencies. 6 months, 10 grand a month. With hiring anyone in-house or an agency, you need to be at the point where you can consistently sustain 10 grand a month in marketing. Before that, I like partnerships. I think that's a really good way to do it. Find people that want to reach your audience and you want to reach theirs, and find ways to collaborate, whether it's co-hosting a contest or co-hosting an event or just cross-promoting each other. It's free. And it's a great way to find those compliments. And that's been a huge way I've grown my own business. Partnerships is a very understated, very big way to grow.
Yeah. Do you take that hand in hand with influencers as well? So if we work with a lot of I would say more affordable fashion brands and small business retailers. Influencers are a piece of that game. How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I think influencers are great. Yeah, it's the Wild West. So the problem with influencers is it's not scalable. But in those early days when you're just trying to get off the ground, I think it's great. And it should always be a small piece of your marketing strategy, but it's not going to be the main driver most of the time, unless you get lucky, which I don't really like to run businesses on luck as much as I can avoid it. I'll take luck, but I don't try to pursue it. Let's put it that way.
I love that. All right. So the opposite of luck is, each week, if I'm a small business owner and I'm sitting down and I'm looking at what are my most important metrics this week to know that I'm on my way to scale, what am I looking at?
Yeah. Growth, new customer acquisition, and growth in new customers, and then retention. How many customers are repurchasing, and what can I do to drive those two numbers? Your lifetime value and your cost to acquire. So how can I get more customers cheaper, and how can I drive a higher lifetime value, more money that they spend with me, higher share of wallet? Those are the two numbers that matter in any business: CAC and LTV.
Perfect. Any last minute tips, Erik, for small businesses that are listening?
Stick with it. It's a roller coaster. The biggest thing I've learned in business is that as the business owner, you're always going to deal with the biggest problems of the business, and those never go away. Take Apple as an example. They're dealing with antitrust and COVID and trade wars and everything else that's happening. It doesn't go away. So just remember what you signed up for, because once I think you accept it, your sort of resilience goes through the roof, because then when you're I'm going to deal with problems, that's part of this. When the problem arises, you're of course, there's always a problem. There's always going to be that. It's how it goes. And marketing is going to be one of them. And it's always a moving target. But once you accept that, it's a lot more fun.
If it were easy, everyone would do it, right?
Amen.
Erik, thanks so much for joining us today. Your tips were awesome. Much appreciated. Congrats on your success, and we will stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We hope that you loved it. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a rating and review down below for a chance to be one of our featured listeners each and every week. For more information on our spirit of community over competition and how to access complete show notes and bonus downloads from our guests, head on over to theboutiquehub.com and join the community. We'll see you next week.